Вроде бы успел. Вроде бы успел. Добро пожаловать на презентацию новой PlayStation 5, ребятушки, от компании Sony. Давайте посмотрим, что для нас приготовили. Привет.
Unfortunately, we had to cancel the talk that we had planned for GDC, but we do have some super exciting news about PS5, and who better to bring that to you than the one and only Mark Cerny. Without further ado, over to you, Mark.
Thank you, Jim. There will be lots of chances later on this year to look at the PlayStation 5 games. Today, I want to talk a bit about our goals for the PlayStation 5 hardware and how they influenced the development of the console. I think you all know I'm a big believer in console generations. Once every 5 or 6 or 7 years, a console arrives with substantial new capabilities. There's a lot of learning by the game developers, hopefully not too overwhelming, and soon there's games that could never have been created before. Now, it used to be that as a console designer, you'd somehow intuit what would be the best set of capabilities for the new console, and then build it in complete secrecy. For the PlayStation consoles, that period lasted through PlayStation 3, a powerful and groundbreaking console, but also one that caused quite a lot of heartache, as it was initially difficult to develop games for. So, starting with PlayStation 4, we've taken a different approach, roughly centered around 3 principles. The first of these is listening to the developers, which is to say that a lot of what we put into a console derives directly from the needs and aspirations of the game creators. We definitely do have some ideas of our own, but at the core of our philosophy for designing consoles is that game players are here for the fantastic games, which is to say that game creators matter. Anything we can do to make life easier for the game creators or help them realize their dreams, we will do. So, about once every 2 years, I take a tour of the industry. I go to the various developers and publishers, sit down, and discuss how they're doing with the current consoles and what they'd like to see in future consoles. This requires weeks on the road, as reaching the bulk of the game creators involves talking to well over 100 people at something like 24 publishers and developers. And it is incredibly valuable. By the way, the feature most requested by the developers, that was an SSD, which we were very happy to put in the hardware, but a lot of problem solving was required. I'll be doing a deep dive on the SSD and surrounding systems later on in this talk. It's also key to make a generational leap while keeping the console
Говорит о том, что новая
sufficiently
генерация поколения приставок должны быть с SSD и
Now,
типа
with PlayStation
звук
1, 2,
surround.
and 3, the target was a revolution each time with a brand new feature set. That was great in many ways, but time for the developers to get up and running got longer with each console. In the past, I've called this time to triangle. Here's what I had for those 3 consoles. To be clear, I'm not talking about time to make a game. Developers will be ambitious, and it may take them 6 years or so to realize their vision. What I'm talking about is that dead time before graphics and other aspects of game development are up and running, and trying to minimize that. On the other hand, if we're trying to reduce that dead time to 0, that means the hardware architecture can't change at all. We're handcuffed. We need to judge for each feature what value it adds and whether it's worth the increase in developer time needed to support it. So with PlayStation 4, we were able to strike a pretty good balance between performance and familiarity. We got required learning back to PlayStation 1 levels. With PS5, the GPU was definitely the area we felt the most tension between adding new features and keeping a familiar programming model. Ultimately, I think we've ended up with something under a month of getting up to speed. That feels like we're striking about the right balance. I'll go into a bit more detail later today about our philosophy with the GPU and the specific feature set that resulted from it. It's also very important for us, as the hardware team, to find new dreams, by which I mean something other than CPU performance, GPU performance, and the amount of RAM. The increase in graphics performance over the past 2 decades has been astonishing, but there are other areas in which we can innovate and provide significant value to the game creators, and through them, the players. That's why the SSD was very much on our list of directions to explore, regardless of
новой PlayStation будет SSD диск.
Developers and publishers. The biggest feature in this category is the custom engine for audio. That's today's final topic. The push for vastly improved audio.
Да он раз ничего такого не говорит, он говорит, что сделали лучше прикрутить. Сделали лучше приставку, если предыдущие части были более сложные к тому, чтобы разработчики разрабатывали игры, и для этого им понадобилось, там, вы видели даты, то типа PlayStation 5 очень хорошо для разработчиков, соответственно, лучше для игроков. Мы послушали разработчика, вы добавили SSD-диск в PlayStation 5. Улучшили процессор, улучшили видео, GPU, да, для графики, движок графики. И по сравнению с четвертой PlayStation 5, типа, он нахваливает. Типа, хотите дословно? Не, ребят, тут столько информации, он столько льет воды, я даже не собираюсь это переводить и озвучивать. Я хочу сфокусироваться только на одной цифре, которая даст нам информацию по поводу жесткого диска. 500 мегабайт было у нас типа предыдущее, плюс 100, а вот мы искали от 2 до 5 миллисекундах. Это типа отклик.
If you compress your game packages, you can fit more data on the Blu-ray disc and also effectively boost your hard drive read speed by the compression ratio. We support zlib decompression.
Настолько пафосно говорит, что вы поставили SSD-диск на приставку, я не знаю. Он 5 минут тратит нашего времени, чтобы сказать, на новой PlayStation будет SSD-диск. Окей, чувак. SSD-диски у каждой собаки сейчас стоят. Я не знаю. У каждого, кто сейчас смотрит этот стрим, по-любому стоит SSD-диск. Это не новшество. Это окей, круто, улучшили и хорошо. Это PlayStation 4 сейчас описывается. Что было типа время отклика 20 секунд.
Gigabyte is not much data. Games are using 5 or 6 gigabytes of RAM on PlayStation 4, so boot times and load times.
Теперь оперативку говорит, использовали 4-5 оперативки, и скорость загрузки была такая-то.
Wait for the level to reload every time you die, and you wait for what is euphemistically called fast travel. And all of that leads to the dream. What if we could have not just an SSD, but a blindingly fast SSD?
Короче, PlayStation 4 было вот это время, от 50 до 100. На PlayStation 5 будет 5 гигабайт в секунду.
As for time to load a gigabyte, this is next gen we're talking about, so memory is bigger. Instead, we should be asking how long to load 2 gigabytes. And the answer is about a quarter of a second. I mean, that's amazing. We're talking 2 orders of magnitude, meaning very roughly 100 times faster.
1 гигабайт грузился
20 секунд. The potential is that the game boots in a second. There are no load screens. The game just fades down while loading a half dozen gigabytes and fades back up again. Same for a reload. You're immediately back in the action.
Будет говорить, что эта технология позволит добавить в играх возможность, что вообще будут отсутствовать загрузочные экраны, и игроки будут наслаждаться больше игрой.
To being so blindingly fast that we might even have to slow that transition down. Pretty cool, right? But for me, this is not the primary reason to change from a hard drive to an SSD. The primary reason for an ultra-fast SSD is that it gives the game designer freedom.
Самая основная причина, по которой поставили SSD, это дать свободу разработчикам игр, которая позволит им больше сконцентрироваться на разработке игры. Знаете, что я вам хочу сказать? Сейчас.
Say we're making an adventure game and we have 2 rich environments where we each want enough textures and models to fill memory, which you can do as long as you have a long staircase or elevator ride or a...
Знаете, что я вам хочу сказать? Что это очень меня настораживает, потому что когда на презентации PlayStation 5 вместо того, чтобы показать PlayStation, игры, которые выйдут с этой PlayStation, нам заливает про архитектуру разработки, про SSD диск рассказывают 5-10 минут, как будто это такое и тому подобное. Типа, камон, серьезно? Значит, нам ничего не покажут.
Dedicated to this sort of work, but still, it's a giant distraction for a team that just wants to make their
Не вызывает доверия, ребят.
So when I talked about the dream of an SSD, part of the reason for that 5 gigabyte a second target was to eliminate loads, but also part of the reason for that target was streaming. As in, what if the SSD is so fast that as the player is turning around, it's possible to load textures for everything behind the player in that split second? If you figure that it takes half a second to turn, that's 4 gigabytes of compressed data you can load. That sounds about right for next gen. Anyway,
Да они цены не сказали.
Another strategy for increasing
Про жесткий диск до сих пор рассказывает.
For example, we might group all the data together for each city block. That removes most of the seeks, and the streaming gets faster. But there's a downside too, which is that frequently used data is included in many chunks and therefore is on the hard drive many, many times. Marvel's Spider-Man uses this strategy, and though it works very well for increasing the streaming speed, there's a massive duplication as a result. Some of the objects like mailboxes or news racks are on the hard drive 400 times. What I'm describing here are things that cramp a creative director's style. Either level design gets a little bit boring in places, or the data is duplicated so many times
Так я
that no
тоже
longer fits
типа
on the Blu-ray disc.
не могу понять, почему он преподносит установку на PlayStation SSD диска как какую-то революцию. Говорит о том, что ускорится скорость загрузки, увеличится типа прогружение объектов на левеле и так далее. Зачем это все нам? Так, да, так будто рассказывают, как будто мы, блядь, в 2010 году и SSD не. У всех уже, блядь, SSD диски. Да, они загружаются быстрее. Да, они лучше, чем старые. Да, они более. Ну, это понятно. Так а зачем? Пусть покажет нам игры, которые будут. Пусть покажет PlayStation. Пусть скажет цену. Знаете что? У него нету этой информации.
On PlayStation 4, game data on the hard drive feels very distant and difficult to use. By the time you realize you need a piece of data, it's much too late to go out.
Я надеюсь, она не будет штуку стоить. Я надеюсь, она будет стоить максимум $500. Пусть дату нам, когда в магазинах появится, скажет. Зачем это все? Я не пойму. Он, смотрите, что показывает. Передача пакетов 16-гигабайтной DDR6, типа оперативки, насколько ускоряется, типа 1 секунду геймплея. Ну, блин.
This is one of the reasons that 16 gigabytes of GDDR6 feels right for PlayStation 5. The presence of the SSD reduces the need for a massive intergenerational increase.
Ребят, запомните раз и навсегда.
So, back to the dream of the SSD. Here's the set of targets.
Вам пытаются
With the game in a second.
долго, вместо того, чтобы ответить на ваш вопрос или подать нужную информацию, рассказывают кучу ненужной информации, вас пытаются наебать. Запомните раз и навсегда.
One piece of the puzzle. There's a lot of places where bottlenecks can occur in between the SSD and the game code that uses the data. You can see this on PlayStation 4. If I use an SSD with 10 times the speed of a standard hard drive, I probably see only double the loading speed, if that. For PlayStation 5, our goal was not just that the SSD itself be 100 times faster. It was that game loads and streaming would be 100 times faster. So every single potential bottleneck needed to be addressed. And there are a lot of them.
Пиздец.
Let's look at check-in and what happens when its overhead
Вот
gets
показывают,
100
как
times
пакет
larger.
передается.
Conceptually, check-in is a pretty simple
Зачем?
process. Data is loaded into system memory from the hard drive or SSD. It's examined. A few values are tweaked to check it in, and then it's moved to its final location. At the SSD speeds we're talking about, that last part, moving the data, meaning copying it from one location to another, takes roughly an entire next-gen CPU core. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. If all the overheads get 100 times larger, that will cripple the frame rate as soon as the player moves, and that massive stream of data starts coming
Сколько дизлайков, интересно, под этим
So to
видео?
solve all of that, we built a lot of
5000
custom hardware,
дизлайков.
namely a custom flash controller and a number of custom units in our main chip. The flash controller in the SSD was designed for smooth and bottleneck-free operation.
Так и посмотрите, что с чатом творится.
For example, there are 6 levels of priority when reading from the SSD. Priority is very important. You can imagine the player heading into some new location in the world and the game requesting a few gigabytes of textures. And while those textures are being loaded, an enemy is shot and has to speak a few dying words. Having multiple priority levels lets the audio for those dying words get loaded immediately. On one side, that flash controller connects to the actual flash dies that supply the storage. To reach our bandwidth target of 5 gigabytes a second, we ended up with a 12-channel interface. 8 channels wouldn't be enough. The resulting bandwidth we've achieved is actually 5.5 gigabytes. With a 12-channel interface, the most natural size that emerges for an SSD is 825 gigabytes. The key question for us was, is that enough? I mean, it's tempting to add more, but Flash certainly doesn't come cheap, and we have a responsibility to our gaming audience to be cost-effective with regards to what we put in the console. Ultimately, we resolved this question by looking at the play patterns of a broad range of gamers. We examined the specific games that they were playing over the course of a weekend or a week or a month, and whether that set of games would fit properly on the SSD. We were able to establish that the friction caused by reinstalls or redownloads would be quite low. And so we locked in on that 825 gigabyte size, while also preparing multiple strategies so that those who want more storage can add it. I'll go through the details in a moment. Back to the
825 гигабайт будет основная, да, основной чип, но
flash controller. On the other side, it connects to our main custom chip via 4 lanes of
custom flash controller. Но это...
And inside the main custom chip is a pretty hefty unit dedicated to I/O. Before we talk about what that does, let's talk compression for a moment. PlayStation 4 used zlib as its compression format. We decided to use it again on PlayStation 5, but on my 2017 tour of developers, I learned about a new format called Kraken from Rad Game Tools. It's like zlib's smarter cousin. Simple, similar types of algorithms, but
Я думаю, не
10% better compression, which is pretty big. That means 10% more game on the UHD Blu-ray disc or on the SSD. Kraken had only been out for a year, but it was already becoming a de facto industry standard. Half of the teams I talked to were either using it or getting ready to evaluate it. So we hustled and built a custom decompressor into the I/O unit.
Макс, хороший вопрос.
Over 5 gigabytes of Kraken format input data a second. After decompression, that typically becomes 8 or 9 gigabytes, but the unit itself is capable of outputting as much as 22 gigabytes a second if the data happen to compress particularly well. By the way, in terms of performance, that custom decompressor equates to 9 of our Zen 2 cores. That's what it would take to decompress the Kraken stream with a conventional.
Рассказывают о новой способности приставки декомпрессировать, да, сжимать дату информации, что ты можешь после декомпрессии информации на жестком диске с 5 освободить, 8 гигабайт уместить в 5. Типа вот такого что-то. И он нам рассказывает про эту декомпрессию.
Processors is dedicated to SSD I/O. This lets us bypass traditional file I/O and its bottlenecks when reading from the SSD. The other is responsible for memory mapping, which I know doesn't sound like anything related to the SSD, but a lot of developers map and remap memory as part of file I/O, and this too can become a bottleneck. There are coherency engines to assist the coprocessors. Coherency comes up a lot in places. Probably the biggest coherency issue is stale data in the GPU caches. Flushing all of the GPU caches whenever the SSD is read is an unattractive option. It could really hurt the GPU performance. So we've implemented a gentler way of doing
Это не
things,
презентация
where the
PlayStation 5.
coherency
По-моему,
engines
народ
inform the
типа...
GPU of the overwritten
Это
address
не
ranges
презентация
and
PlayStation
custom
5. Это
scrubbers in several dozen GPU caches
вода.
to pinpoint evictions of just those address ranges. The best thing is, as a game developer, when you read from the SSD, you don't need to know any of this. You don't even need to know that your data is compressed. You just indicate what data you'd like to read from your original uncompressed file and where you'd like to put it, and the whole process of loading it happens invisibly to you and at very high speed. Back to the dream. Thanks to all of that surrounding hardware, our 5.5 gigabytes a second really should translate into something like 100 times faster I/O than PS4, and allow the dream of no load screens and super fast streaming to become a reality. Having said that, expandability
Зацените количество дизлайков. Было 5, стало 9000.
add storage to whatever we put in the console. Now, the kind of storage you need depends on how you're going to use it. If you have an extensive PlayStation 4 library and you'd like to take advantage of backwards compatibility to play those games on PlayStation 5, then a large external hard drive is ideal. You can leave your games on the hard drive and play them directly from there, thus saving the pricier SSD storage for your PlayStation 5 titles, or you can copy your active PlayStation 4 titles to the SSD. If your purpose in adding more storage is to play PlayStation 5 titles, though, ideally you would add to your SSD storage. We will be supporting
Дорога
certain
к
M2
PlayStation
SSDs.
5
These are
называется.
internal drives that you can get on the open market and install in a bay in the PlayStation 5.
Им надо было
As for which
назвать
ones
жесткий
support
диск.
and when, I'll get to that in a moment. They connect through the custom I/O unit just like our SSD does. So they can take full advantage of the decompression, I/O coprocessors, and all the other features I was talking about. Here's the catch, though. That commercial drive has to be at least as fast as ours. Games that rely on the speed of our SSD.
Рассказывают, так а зачем эта информация? Скажи, пожалуйста, Станислав, вот я к тебе и, ребята, к вам вопрос. Вы как люди, которые ждут или не ждут PlayStation 5, полезная информация, выбираем между ценой PlayStation, как выглядит PlayStation, и играми, которые будут на старте PlayStation, или жесткий диск, который они поставили, блядь, SSD на PlayStation. Какую вы выбрали информацию? А теперь давайте подумаем, зная ваш ответ. Как вы думаете, зачем он нам это рассказывает? Да потому что ему нечего рассказать. И он не может рассказать нам ни цену, он не может показать, как она выглядит, и он не может показать игры. Поэтому ему надо что-то рассказать. Кстати, да, Виталий, похож на профессора из ЧПД.
We can hook up a drive with only 2 priority levels, definitely, but our custom I/O unit has to arbitrate the extra priorities rather than the M2 drive.
Не, люди живые, походу,
And so the
женщины.
M2 drive needs a little
Эта
extra speed to
инфа
take care of
абсолютно не
issues
нужна.
arising from the different approaches.
Абсолютно ненужная
That commercial
информация.
drive also needs to physically fit inside of the bay we created in PlayStation 5 for M2 drives. Unlike internal hard drives, there's unfortunately no standard for the height of an M2 drive. And some M2 drives have giant heat sinks. In fact, some of them even have their own fans.
Привет.
Right now, we're getting M2 drive samples and
Когда
benchmarking
границы
in
откроют,
various ways.
позакрывались все границы,
When
мы не
games
можем
hit
выехать.
beta as they get ready for the PlayStation 5 launch at year-end, we'll also be doing some compatibility testing to make sure that the architecture of particular M2 drives isn't too foreign for the games to handle.
Для разработчиков это
Once we've
тоже
done that
информация
compatibility
нахрен не
testing,
надо.
we should be able to
Посмотрите,
start
что в
letting you
чате
know
творится.
which drives will physically fit and which drive
Посмотрите.
samples have benchmarked appropriately high in our testing.
Посмотрите,
It
что
would be
в чате.
great if that happened by launch, but it's likely to be a bit past it. So please hold off on getting that M2 drive until you hear from us. Okay, back to our principles. Balancing evolution and revolution is the second of them. This was definitely a recurring theme with the GPU. We need new GPU
Баланс
features and
между
capabilities.
эволюцией и
If we only
революцией.
have more
Новые
performance, it's not
фишки,
really a new generation of
новые
console.
фишки.
Of course, many of these capabilities result in more performance. That's part of
На
why a
какой
PlayStation
хер
5
нам нужен
teraflop is more
SSD?
powerful than a PlayStation 4 teraflop. But we aren't just looking for the performance. We also need the ability to do something with the GPU that could not have been
Скучно,
done.
пиздец, не то слово.
And we need higher performance per watt. Every time we double the performance of some GPU component, we don't want to find out we've doubled the power consumed and the heat produced.
Видеочип.
But at the same time,
Я
we
не
have to
могу
make
понять,
sure
зачем
the
это он
GPU can run
рассказывает.
PS4 games.
Для кого эта
And we have to
информация?
ensure that the architecture is easy for the developers to adopt. Now, backwards compatibility was handled masterfully by AMD. They treated it as a key need throughout the design process. As our solution to adding new features without blindsiding developers, we made sure that if there were new significant
Лаки, не
features,
ругайся и не
it would be
капси, бо тебя
optional
тут
to use
забанят
them.
сейчас.
The GPU supports ray tracing, but you don't have to use ray tracing to make your game. The GPU supports primitive shaders, but
Про
you can release your
ray-tracing
first game
начинает
on PlayStation
рассказывать.
5 without making any use of them. Before I get into the capabilities of the GPU, I'd like to
Что
make
такое
clear 2
RDNA?
points that can be quite confusing. First, we have a custom AMD GPU based on their RDNA 2 technology. What does that mean? AMD is continuously improving and revising their tech. For RDNA 2, their goals were, roughly speaking, to reduce power consumption by re-architecting the GPU to put data close to where it's needed,
100%.
to
Стоп,
optimize the GPU for
меня
performance,
тоже,
and to adding new,
я
more
не
advanced
понимаю,
features.
зачем эта информация
But
нужна.
that feature set is malleable, which is to say that we have our own needs for PlayStation, and that can factor into.
Заебал тебя, слушать не хочу. Кто из вас, покупая PlayStation, любую из предыдущих 4 частей, вопрос к зрителям, кто из вас покупал PlayStation, хоть раз интересовался скоростью передачи данных жесткого диска? Кто из вас, покупая PlayStation, интересовался, какая там скорость, сколько там оперативной памяти? Зачем это он рассказывает? Покупая игровую приставку, ты интересуешься, какие на ней есть эксклюзивы. Все. Все, больше тебе ничего не надо. Покупая игровую приставку, ты интересуешься, какие игры ты сможешь поиграть эксклюзивно на этой приставке. Пиздюк, блядь.
And CU count should be avoided
Простите.
as well. In the case of CPUs, we all understand this. The
Я не
PlayStation
могу
4 and
понять,
PlayStation
зачем он
5
нам
each
это
have 8
рассказывает. Я не
CPUs,
могу
but we
понять.
never think that meant the
Он
capabilities and
тратит наше
performance
время
were
за зря.
It's the same for CUs. For one thing, they've been getting much larger over time. Adding new features means adding lots of transistors. In fact, the transistor count for a PlayStation 5
Купил
CU
приставку,
is
блядь,
62%
HDMI
larger
кабель
than
в
the
телевизор,
transistor count for a
джойстик на
PlayStation
зарядку,
4
блядь, и
CU.
сел и погнал.
Second, the PlayStation 5 GPU is backwards compatible with PlayStation 4.
Покажи
What does that
5 эксклюзивов.
One way you can achieve
GTA
backwards
6
compatibility
будет, новый
is to put the
Assassin's Creed
previous console's
эксклюзивно.
chipset in the new console,
Гоночки
like we did
там,
with some PlayStation 3s.
какие
But that's,
это?
of course,
Forza
extremely
Motorsport? Не,
expensive.
Forza это
A
у
better way is
Xbox.
to incorporate
У
any differences in the
PlayStation.
previous console's logic into
Еще
the new
что-то,
console's
новый бог
custom chips.
войны.
Meaning that
Еще там
even as the
какой-то,
technology
чтоб люди
evolves, the logic
охерели.
and feature set that PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 4 Pro titles rely on is still available in backwards compatibility modes. One advantage of this
Это
strategy is
первая
that once
скучная
backwards compatibility is in the console, it's in. It's not as if a cost down will remove backwards compatibility like it did on PlayStation 3. Achieving this unification of functionality took years of efforts by AMD, as any roadmap advancement creates a potential divergence in logic. Running PS4 and PS4 titles at boosted frequencies has also added complexity. The boost is truly massive this time
Я
around, and some
возмущен.
game code just can't handle it.
Я
Testing
недоволен.
has to be done on a title-by-title basis. Results are excellent, though. We recently took a look at the top 100 PlayStation 4 titles as ranked by playtime, and we're expecting
Про игры
almost
начал
all
говорить,
to be
братцы.
playable at launch on PlayStation 5. With regards to new features,
Что,
as I
что?
said, our strategy was to
Более
try
100
to break
игр
new
с
ground,
PlayStation
but at the
4
same
будут
time not
запускаться
to
на
expecting
PlayStation 5?
almost all of them to be
Ага.
playable at launch on PlayStation 5.
Народ, ну это хорошая новость. Более 100 самых крутых игр с PlayStation 4 вы сможете запустить на PlayStation 5. Я думаю, как это будет работать. Ваш аккаунт PlayStation ставите на PlayStation 5 И те игры, которые у вас есть на PlayStation 4, вы сможете запустить на PlayStation 5.
With regards to new features, as I said, our strategy was to try to break new ground, but at the same time not to require
Но это
use
уже
of the new
хорошо.
GPU capabilities. For
Хотя
more
об
than a
этом
decade,
говорили
GPUs
давно.
have imposed a restriction on game engines. Software handles vertex processing, but for the most part, dedicated hardware is responsible
Теперь
for
говорит
triangles
нам
and
про
other geometry
геометрию
that the vertices
движка.
form. That means
Новые
it's not
возможности
possible to do even
графического
basic
движка и
optimizations,
геометрии.
such as aborting processing of a vertex if all geometry that uses it is off-screen. PlayStation 5 has a new unit called the Geometry Engine, which brings handling of triangles and other primitives under full
Куплю PlayStation
programmatic
5,
control.
чтобы играть в игры
As
на
a game
PlayStation
developer,
3.
you're free to ignore its existence and use the PlayStation 5 GPU as if it were no more capable than the PS4 GPU.
PlayStation 3,
or
не
you
PlayStation
can use this
4.
new intelligence in various ways. Simple usage could be performance optimization, such as removing backfaced or off-screen vertices and triangles.
Не гоните
More
бесит.
complex usage involves something called
Подождите,
primitive
чего
shaders,
вы
which
мне
allow the game to,
рассказываете?
which brings handling geometry down.
Заткнись.
Testing has to be years of efforts by AMD. It's not as if a cost down will
Подожди.
remove backwards compatibility like it did on PlayStation 3. Achieving this unification of functionality took years of efforts by AMD, as any roadmap advancement creates a potential divergence in logic. Running PS4 and PS4 titles at boosted frequencies has also added complexity. The boost is truly massive this time around, and some game code just can't handle it. Testing has to be done on a title-by-title basis. Results are excellent, though. We recently took a look at the top 100 PlayStation 4 titles as ranked
Не, не
by
гоните,
Playtime.
с PlayStation 4, чего вы тут на...
To use the intersection engine, first you build what is called an acceleration.
PlayStation
It's
4.
data in RAM.
Ну,
that
это
contains
круто, это
all of your
круто.
geometry. There's a specific set of formats you can use.
Хотя кому
that
это надо, я не
variations
пойму.
on the same BVH
Для
concept.
тех, у кого нет
Then, in
PlayStation
your shader
4.
program, you use a new instruction that asks the intersection engine to check array against the BVH. While the intersection engine is processing the requested ray triangle or ray box intersections, the shaders are free to do other work.
Что это за
Having said that,
ноутбуки?
the
Скажите,
ray
как
tracing
эта
instruction
фирма
is pretty memory
называется?
intensive, so it's a good mix with logic heavy.
Вот эта фирма.
There's of course no need to use ray tracing. PS4 graphics engines will run just fine on PlayStation 5. But it presents an opportunity for those interested. I'm thinking it'll take less than 1 million rays a second to have a big impact on audio. That should be enough for
нахуй это?
audio occlusion and some
Ой,
reverb
дядя,
calculations.
дядя,
With a bit
14
more of
тысяч
the GPU
дизлайков.
invested in ray
И
tracing,
все
it should be
посмотри,
possible to do some very
заткнись,
nice global
скучно,
illumination.
засыпаем.
Having said that,
Надоело,
adding ray traced shadows and
скучно,
reflections to a traditional graphics engine could easily
дерьмо.
take hundreds of millions of rays a second, and full
Ёб
ray
твою
tracing could take
мать.
billions. How far can we go? I'm starting to get quite bullish you at higher frequency. Just calculate teraflops, you get the same number. But actually, the performance is noticeably different because teraflops is defined as the computational capability of the vector ALU.
Это соневский,
That's
да,
just one
ноут?
part of the GPU. There are a lot of other units. And those other units all run faster when the GPU frequency is higher. At 33% higher frequency, rasterization goes 33% faster. Processing the command buffer goes that much faster.
На
The L2
33%
and,
быстрее.
other caches have that much higher bandwidth, and so on. About the only downside is that system memory is 33% further away in terms of cycles. But the large number of benefits more than counterbalance that. As a friend of mine says, a rising tide lifts all boats.
Вая,
Also,
да?
it's easier to fully use 36 CUs in parallel than it is to fully use 48 CUs. When triangles are small, it's much harder to fill all those CUs with useful work. So there's a lot to be said for faster, assuming you can handle the resulting power and heat issues, which frankly, we haven't always done the best job at. Part of the reason for that is, historically, our process for setting CPU and GPU frequencies has relied on some heavy-duty guesswork with regards to how much electrical power
сколько
games will consume
ненужной,
and how much heat will be produced as a
сколько
result
ненужной
inside of the
инфы,
console.
бля.
Power consumption varies a lot from game to game. When I play God of War on my PS4 Pro, I know the power consumption is high just by the fan noise. But power isn't simply about engine quality. It's about the minutiae of what's being displayed.
Он знаете, о чем только что сказал? Он говорит, power consumption это очень важно. И чем круче игра и графические возможности игры и так далее, прорисовка, тем громче шумит ваша приставка. Когда я играл на PlayStation 4 Pro в Бога войны, я слышал, что по шуму приставки, что игра очень крутая, потому что шум от приставки был просто огромнейший. Блядь, ты серьезно? Ты нам про это рассказываешь?
Get it right, fan noise is minimal. If we get it wrong, the console will be quite loud for the higher power games, and there's even a chance that it might overheat and shut down if we misestimate power too badly. PlayStation 5 is especially challenging because the CPU supports 256-bit native instructions that consume a lot of power. These are great here and there, but presumably only minimal use.
SSD, начали
Or
за
are
процессор
they? If we
говорить.
plan for major 256
256 бит, чтобы вы понимали, процессор.
Lower or noticeably increase the size of the power supply and fan. So, after much discussion, we decided to go with a very different direction on PlayStation 5. We built a GPU with 36 CUs. Mind you, RDNA 2 CUs are large. Each has 62% more transistors than the CUs we were using on PlayStation 4. So, if we compare transistor counts,
слева
36
это
RDNA 2
процессор
CUs equates to roughly
PlayStation
50
5,
PlayStation
справа
4
это
CUs.
процессор
It is a
PlayStation
fairly
4.
sizable GPU.
Нет, сорян, это
GPU.
GPU. Извините, это видеопроцессор.
We continuously run the GPU and CPU in boost mode. We supply a generous amount of electrical power and then increase the frequency of GPU and CPU until they reach the capabilities of the system's
Плохо,
cooling
что
system.
джойстиком нельзя в него
It's
кинуть.
a completely different paradigm. Rather than running at constant frequency and letting power vary based on the workload, we run at essentially constant power and let the frequency vary based on the workload. We then tackled the engineering challenge of a cost-effective and high-performance cooling solution designed for that specific power level. In some ways, it becomes a simpler problem because there are no more unknowns. There's no need to guess what power consumption the worst-case game might have. As for the details of the cooling solution, we're saving them for our teardown. I think you'll be
16 тысяч
quite happy with
дизлайков.
what the
Посмотрите
engineering team
комментарии.
came up with.
Заткнись, написали
So,
ему.
how fast can we run the GPU and CPU with this strategy? The simplest approach would be to look at the actual temperature of the silicon die and throttle the frequency on that basis. But that won't work. It fails to create a consistent PlayStation 5 experience.
38 минут разговор ни о чем.
Console slower simply because it was in a hot room. So,
честно, я честно хочу спросить, честно, типа без колкости это, при всем я Sony Boy, ребята, я Sony Boy. У меня почти все приставки PlayStation были, и я люблю все игры, которые я проходил, начиная от Siphon фильтра и заканчивая последней частью Бога войны и так далее. Я Sony Boy. Да не, сок пью яблочный обычный. Скажите честно. Скажите честно. Нахуя он это нам рассказывает? Ответьте мне на вопрос. Неужели, показывая этот ролик, выкладывая этот ролик на ютубе, они не могли понять, что куча негатива? Зачем эта информация? Вот зачем эта информация про терафлопы, про 2,2 гигагерца?
at 3 gigahertz was causing headaches with the old strategy.
Зачем?
But now we can run it as high as 3.5 gigahertz. In fact, it spends most of its time at that frequency. That doesn't mean all games will be running at 2.23 gigahertz and 3.5 gigahertz. When that worst-case game arrives, it will run at a lower clock speed, but not too much lower. To reduce power by 10%, it only takes a couple of percent reduction in frequency, so I'd expect any downclocking to be pretty minor. All things considered, the change to a variable frequency approach will show significant gains for PlayStation gamers. The final of our 3 principles was about finding new dreams. It's important for us on the hardware team to find new ways to expand or deepen gaming, and that's what led us to a focus on 3D audio. As players, we experience the game through the visuals, through audio, and through the feedback we receive from the controller, such as rumble or haptics. Personally, I feel a game is just dead without audio. Visuals are, of course, important, but the impact of audio is huge as well. At the same time, the audio team on a game project has to do a lot with a little. For example, on PlayStation 4, there's fierce competition for the Jaguar CPU core. Audio typically ends up getting just a fraction of a core. That's not much of a computational resource, particularly when you consider that the visuals run at 30 or 60 frames a second, but audio processing needs to happen at almost 200 times a second.
3-4-5 игр, которые будут с релизом.
It's been tough going making forward progress on audio with PlayStation 4, particularly when PlayStation 3 was such a beast when it came to audio. The SPUs in Cell were almost a perfect device for audio rendering. Simple pipelined algorithms could really take advantage of asynchronous DMA and frequently reached 100% utilization of the floating point unit. There's unfortunately nothing comparable on PlayStation 4. Probably the most dramatic progress in the PlayStation 4 generation has been with virtual reality. The PSVR hardware has its own audio unit. It supports about 50 pretty decent 3D sound sources. And this provided a hint as to where we could go with audio, as well as some valuable experience. Not to oversimplify, but here were our goals for audio on PlayStation 5. The first goal was great audio for everyone, not just VR users or soundbar owners or headphone users. That meant audio had to be part of the console. It couldn't be a peripheral. The second goal was to support hundreds of sound sources. We didn't want developers to have to pick and choose what sounds would get 3D effects and which wouldn't. We wanted every sound in the game to have dimensionality. And finally, we wanted to really take on the challenges of presence and locality. Now, when we say presence, we mean the feeling that you're actually there. You've entered the matrix. It's not, of course, something we thought we could perfectly achieve, but the idea was that if we stopped using just a...
Голова болит уже от него. Мне уже голова болит от него. Такая чушь. Начинает говорить про 3D, про идеальный 3D звук и цели, которые они хотят достичь благодаря этому. Что? Зачем ты нам рассказываешь, блядь, вместо того, что мы хотим увидеть? Зачем ты нам, блядь, ни один, запомни на меня, профессор, послушай меня, ни один человек в мире, ни один, блядь, из 150 миллионов или сколько вы там продали приставок, ни один человек не покупает приставку, потому что ему нравится, блядь, какой звук он издает. Глубоко насрать.
That there was one last enemy growling and hunting you down, but it was difficult to tell quite where that enemy was. With headphones, you could tell that the enemy was somewhere on the right, which let you deduce, if you couldn't see it, that it must be somewhere behind and to your right. But with 3D audio,
так еще, блядь, скриншот, знаете, с какой игры поставили? Dead Space, блядь.
And you take it out. So, how do we know where a sound is coming from in the first place? Well, all those bumps and folds in the ear have a meaning, evolutionarily speaking. Based on what direction the sound is coming from, sound waves bounce around inside the ear, there's some constructive and destructive interference, and the result is a change in volume.
Понимаете, сейчас на презентации PlayStation 5, дороги PlayStation 5, он нам стоит и рассказывает, как работает звук. То, что звук, который мы слышим, попадает в наше ушное сюда в ухо и отпрыгивает от стенок ушного там этого самого и идет до Зачем, блядь? Как, вот нам показывают информацию, как мы слышим.
The horizontal axis is the direction, front, back, left, right, and the color gives the degree of attenuation of the sound at that frequency.
Серега, это жесть.
HRTF is as unique to an individual as a
Такого
fingerprint.
еще,
In fact,
конечно,
you're looking at mine right now. Here's how we measure an HRTF. We've taken hundreds of people through this process. We put a microphone in the subject's left and right ear canals, and then sit the subject down in the middle of an array of 22 speakers. We then play an audio sweep from each speaker.
Это новая
as we
PlayStation
rotate
такая,
the
чтобы вы
subject.
понимали.
In
Да
the
нет,
course of
шучу.
10 or 20 minutes, we're
Это
able to
они
sample the
проводили
HRTF at over
сотни
1,000
экспериментов,
locations.
чтобы
Using
понять,
HRTF when rendering
как
audio
типа
is
сделать
unparalleled
лучший звук,
quality, but
выход
it's
звука с
computationally
PlayStation.
expensive. The simplest way to use an HRTF is to process a sound source to make it appear as if it's coming from one of those 1,000 locations we sampled. Unfortunately, the processing has to be done in frequency domain rather than time domain, so there's multiple fast Fourier transforms for every sound source for every audio.
Просто на секундочку.
That's a lot.
20 тысяч дизлайков.
This computational complexity is the determining factor for our strategy. It meant we had to bite the bullet and design and build a custom hardware unit for 3D audio. Collectively, we're referring to the hardware unit and the proprietary algorithms we run on it as
620 тысяч человек сейчас сидит, смотрит. Как он нам
The meaning of
втирает
3D
дичь.
audio and technology should be pretty obvious here. As for Tempest, I feel it really reflects our goals with audio. It suggests a certain intensity of
Спасибо за
experience and also
подписку.
hints at your
Спасибо за
presence
подписку,
with it.
Дань.
We're calling the hardware unit that we built the Tempest engine. It's based on AMD's GPU technology. We modified a compute unit in such a way as to make it very close to the SPUs in PlayStation 3. Remember when I said that they were ideal for audio? So the Tempest engine has no caches, just like an SPU. All data access is via DMA, just like an SPU. Our target was that it would have more power than a CPU, thanks to the parallelism that a GPU can achieve, and that it would be more efficient than our GPU, thanks to the SPU-like architecture. The goal being to make possible near 100% utilization of the CPU's vector units. Where we ended up is a unit with roughly the same SIMD power and bandwidth as all 8 Jaguar cores in PlayStation 4 combined. If we were to use the same algorithms as PSVR, that's enough something like 5,000 sound sources. But of course, we want to use more complex
Даня, я не
algorithms, and we don't need
вытягиваю.
anything like
Саня,
that
добро
number of
пожаловать.
sounds. It would have been wonderful if
Я знаете, что боюсь? Что он сейчас в конце... Ну, увидимся на следующей презентации PlayStation, и типа идите нах. И я не хочу 620 тысяч зрителей, я хочу, чтобы показали приставку, я хочу, чтобы показали игры, я хочу, чтобы сказали, сколько она будет стоить, я хочу, чтобы сказали хотя бы в каком году она выйдет, я хочу узнать, чтобы сказали, какие эксклюзивы будут на старте, чтобы я типа понимал, чтобы я что-то ждал. Когда запускали предыдущую PlayStation, ребята, там такие игры были, типа Metal Gear 4 там и так далее и тому подобного. А сейчас у меня от него голова болит уже, понимаете? У меня от него уже болит голова. Футбол Гейм, добро пожаловать на канал. Он что сейчас, блядь, нам рассказывает? Как они, типа, пытались найти и сделать лучший звук и проводили эксперименты, типа, звуковую. Он мне рассказывает, как происходит, как работает слух человека. Зачем это мне? Презентация для технарей, технарям это нахер не надо. Никому из людей вот эта информация нахер не надо.
HRTF data from the closest locations that we have.
Привет, Альберт.
The sound source might be
Никому это не надо.
Very special handling as that blend keeps changing, and that can cause phase artifacts in the resulting audio. Or the sound source might have a size to it, meaning it should feel as if it's coming from an area rather than a single point. There's also whole categories of approaches to handle. 3D audio can be implemented using individual processing of 3D sound sources. But alternatively, ambisonics can be used for 3D audio. Ambisonics being somewhat like the spherical harmonics used in computer graphics. And finally, there's audio devices. The player might be using headphones or TV speakers or have a higher-end surround sound setup with 6 or more speakers, all of which need different approaches. That's a lot of variations. It's nice to have the computational resources of the Tempest engine, but it's clear that achieving our ultimate goals with 3D audio is going to be...
Говорит, и очень важно то, что игроки могут использовать разные варианты вывода звука. Это может быть и наушники, это может быть телевизор, это может быть звуковая система. И это огромное количество вариантов для вывода звука, и каждая из них требует своей настройки. Серьезно? Спасибо, капитан Очевидность. А то, блядь, мы сидим тут и думаем, звук с наушников одинаковый от звука системы 5.1 с сабвуфером. Один в один, блядь. А вот, типа, если вы вдруг не знали, система, как вы получаете звук. Послушайте, это очень важно.
We have a basic implementation of virtual surround sound up and running. We're now looking at increasing the size of that sweet spot,
Говно, я согласен.
making the area
если он в конце, типа,
3D effect larger.
Не покажет, если он в конце не покажет нам, ребята, PlayStation, как хотя бы будет выглядеть. Бля, ему в очки плюну.
But we're going to see what we can do to bring virtual surround sound to a similar level, after which we'll start in on setups with more speakers, such as 6-channel surround sound. It's now to the point where some of the PlayStation 5 games in development are extensively using these systems. One of the game demos allows you to toggle between conventional PlayStation 4-style stereo audio and our new 3D audio. I listened with just an ordinary pair of over-the-ear headphones, and wow, I could feel a difference. 3D audio has that dimensional feel to it. Conventional stereo audio feels
Новый PlayStation будет не просто стереозвук, как это было в предыдущей приставки. Это там будет 3D аудио. Он говорит, я послушал в наушниках, и это огромная разница. Вау!
Well, the answer is no, but you've probably caught on to what's missing here, namely whose HRTF was being used. It wasn't mine, it was the default HRTF. The audio team analyzed the hundreds that they measured and chose the one they felt was the closest fit to the total game-playing audience. This shows a piece of the default HRTF on the
вот
left.
этот цвет пукана людей, которые типа смотрят сейчас стрим. Вот этот цвет пукана людей.
With the default HRTF, as I said, the 3D audio sounds pretty great.
Блин, бро, я не знаю, я тоже, мне что-то, я очень опасаюсь, не хочу на Xbox переходить. Сколько дизов, давайте посмотрим. 23 тысячи дизлайков, посмотрите чат, посмотрите чат.
A corollary to this is that there are a few people whose HRTFs are sufficiently far from the default HRTF, that's the red dot here, that they can toggle between PS4 style and PS5 style audio and not sense much difference.
Вот это зря, вот это лучше бы вы не выпускали. Вот это видео лучше бы вы молчали.
Presumably they're the ones at the very edges of this diagram. Which means what HRTF you're using is key. I'd like everyone to be able to experience what I'm experiencing, but obviously it's not possible to measure the HRTF of every PlayStation user. That means HRTF selection and synthesis are going to be big topics going forward as the Tempest technology matures. At PlayStation 5 launch, we'll be offering a choice of 5 HRTFs. There's a simple test where you pick the one that gives you the best locality. That's just the first step, though. This is an open-ended research topic. Maybe you'll be sending us a photo of your ear, and we'll choose a neural network to pick the closest HRTF in our library.
Просит, чтобы
Maybe you'll be sending us a
фотографию
video
выслали.
of your ears
Ребят,
and your head, and we'll make a 3D model of them and synthesize the HRTF. Maybe you'll play an audio game to tune your HRTF. We'll be subtly changing it as you play and home in on the HRTF that gives you the highest score, meaning that it matches you the best. This is a journey we'll all be taking together over the next few years. Ultimately, we're committed to enabling everyone to experience
больше
that
дизлайков,
next
чем
level
Тимати
of reality.
получил. Хотя нет, это невозможно.
Hopefully, I've been able to illustrate a bit about our design and decision-making process today and why PlayStation 5 has the feature set that it does. Now comes the fun part. We get to see how the development community takes advantage of that feature set. I'm hoping for the completely unexpected. Will it come from audio, ray tracing, the capabilities of the SSD, or something
Иди
else?
отсюда.
I guess we'll find out.
Со своим SSD.
Thank you for your time today.
Серьезно? Серьезно? Ты шо, тварь? Ты шо дрянь творишь-то? Серьезно? О, бля, дядя, сейчас будет дизлайков. Серьезно? Пипец. Пипец.
Hi. Unfortunately, we had to cancel the talk that we had planned for GDC. But we do have some super exciting news about PS5. And who better to bring that to you than the one and only Mark Cerny. Without further ado, over.
Пиздец. Вы чё творите? Вы чё творите? Ух, ребята, 500 000 просмотров. 33 тысячи дизлайков. За шо? За шо? Ну, такое дерьмище, если честно. Да, нежданно-негаданно. Типа, час времени, народ. Я извиняюсь, типа, за это. Я извиняюсь. Я думал, нам покажут новую PlayStation. Надеюсь, она не будет выглядеть так, как вот этот концепт, потому что она будет очень смешная и несуразная. Надеюсь, она не будет выглядеть так. Мне нечего сказать. Мне нечего сказать, просто как я только могу извиниться. Извините меня за то, что я потратил час вашего времени. Извините меня за то, что я потратил час вашего времени, потому что, ну, это был ад. Никто не знает, как выглядит PlayStation, есть только концепт-арты, и я могу продемонстрировать, плюс есть концепт-арты новых этих самых, скажите мне, джойстиков, которые будут в PlayStation. Нету. Очень сильно распространен концепт-арт, который вы видели на экране, и он выглядит именно так. Везде демонстрируется, везде показывается. Я надеюсь, что Sony не будет выглядеть именно так, что приставка не будет выглядеть именно так. Не хотелось бы, чтобы Sony выглядела вот как вы видите на правой стороне, потому что Xbox будет выглядеть как обычная урна какая-то. Хотелось бы, чтобы они поддерживали, ну, вот такие, да, как и предыдущие части Sony PlayStation были такие небольшие и, скажем так, красивые. Очень много поговаривают, что визуально будет выглядеть как третья плойка. Если вы помните, она была такая чуть выпуклая. Да, похоже на сидушку на унитазе. Ну это, ребята, ну это жесть, Если вот так она будет выглядеть, потому что, типа, это фотография консоли, которую отправляли разработчикам, понимаете? Мы видим здесь выходы, HDMI выходы и разного вида. Где-то тут у нас. Но я надеюсь, что она не будет выглядеть так. Я не хотел бы, чтобы она выглядела так. Ну и новый джойстик. Уже понятно, что они хотят сделать с панелью, как на PS5. Так какой перевод? Перевод того бреда, который он нес. Перевод той ненужной информации. Не знаю, навряд ли это будет выглядеть так. Это, скорее всего, просто концепт-арт. Но хотелось бы, ну, может, чтобы так выглядело. Так 100% нет. Так 100% не будет выглядеть. Хоть визуально это довольно-таки прикольно. Вы помните, да, PlayStation 4 прошка и обычная выглядела как... Ну, не знаю. А это эволюция у нас получается от первой, вторая, третья выпуклая и четвертая часть. Не дай бог она будет выглядеть вот так. 44 тысячи дизов. Не дай бог она будет выглядеть вот так. Хотелось бы, чтобы она, конечно, выглядела вот именно как-то так. Более плоско. Но мы привыкли. Вот этот мне нравится концепт. Вот этот мне нравится концепт. Он такой прикольный. Ну, такое. Так, ладно, народ. И еще раз, я прошу прощения. Я не буду удалять это видео, хоть в нем информации ноль, просто ноль. Я если бы вам сейчас рассказывал про то, что мне приснилось, когда мне было 7 лет, вы бы то больше информации получили. Информации ноль. Для чего этот ролик вышел, я не знаю. Для чего запускать такие ролики, я понятия не имею. Огромное спасибо всем, кто был на стриме. Спасибо, если вы поставили лайк. Напишите, что вы думаете по поводу Sony в комментариях. Можете материться, я вам разрешаю. Всем пока.